Mark Zuckerberg, a journalist, was asking him a question about the news feed. And the journalist was asking him, why is this so important? And Zuckerberg said, a squirrel dying in your front yard may be more relevant to your interests right now than people dying in Africa. And I want to talk about what a web based on that idea of relevance might look like. So when I was growing up in a really rural area in Maine, the internet meant something very different to me. It meant a connection to the world. It meant something that would connect us all together. And I was sure that it was going to be great for democracy and for our society. But there's this kind of shift in how information is flowing online. And it's invisible. And if we don't pay attention to it, it could be a real problem. So I first noticed this in a place I spend a lot of time, my Facebook page. I'm progressive politically, big surprise, but I've always gone out of my way to meet conservatives. I like hearing what they're thinking about. I like seeing what they link to. I like learning a thing or two. And so I was kind of surprised when I noticed one day that the conservatives had disappeared from my Facebook feed. And what it turned out was going on was that Facebook was looking at which links I clicked on. And it was noticing that actually I was clicking more on my liberal friends' links than on my conservative friends' links. And without consulting me about it, it had edited them out. They disappeared. So Facebook isn't the only place that's doing this kind of invisible algorithmic editing of the web. Google's doing it too. If I search for something and you search for something, even right now at the very same time, we may get very different search results. Even if you're logged out, one engineer told me, there are 57 signals that Google looks at. Everything from what kind of computer you're on, to what kind of browser you're using, to where you're located, that it uses to personally tailor your query results. Think about it for a second. There is no standard Google anymore. And the funny thing about this is that it's hard to see. You can't see how different your search results are from anyone else's. But a couple of weeks ago, I asked a bunch of friends to Google Egypt and to send me screenshots of what they got. So here's my friend Scott's screenshot. And here's my friend Daniel's screenshot. When you put them side by side, you don't even have to read the links to see how different these two pages are. But when you do read the links, it's really quite remarkable. Daniel didn't get anything about the protests in Egypt at all in his first page of Google results. Scott's results were full of them. And this was the big story of the day at that time. That's how different these results are becoming. So it's not just Google and Facebook either. This is something that's sweeping the web. There are a whole host of companies that are doing this kind of personalization. Yahoo News, the biggest news site on the internet, is now personalized. Different people get different things. Huffington Post, Washington Post, New York Times, all flirting with personalization in various ways. And where this moves us very quickly toward a world in which the internet is showing us what it thinks we want to see, but not necessarily what we need to see. As Eric Schmidt said, it'll be very hard for people to watch or consume something that has not, in some sense, been tailored for them. So I do think this is a problem. And I think if you take all of these filters together, if you take all of these algorithms, you get what I call a filter bubble. And your filter bubble is kind of your own personal, unique universe of information that you live in online. And what's in your filter bubble depends on who you are, and it depends on what you do. But the thing is that you don't decide what gets in. And more importantly, you don't actually see what gets edited out. So one of the problems with the filter bubble was discovered by some researchers at Netflix. And they were looking at the Netflix queues, and they noticed something kind of funny that a lot of us probably have noticed, which is there's some movies that just sort of zip right up and out to our houses. They enter the queue, they just zip right out. So Iron Man zips right out, right? And Waiting for Superman can wait for a really long time. What they discovered was that in our Netflix queues, there's kind of this epic struggle going on between our future aspirational selves and our more impulsive present selves. We all want to be someone who has watched Rashomon. But right now, we want to watch Ace Ventura for the 4th time. So the best editing gives us a bit of both. It gives us a little bit of Justin Bieber and a little bit of Afghanistan. It gives us some information vegetables. It gives us some information dessert. And the challenge with these kind of algorithmic filters, these personalized filters, is that because they're mainly looking at what you click on first, it can throw off that balance. And instead of a balanced information diet, you can end up surrounded by information junk food. So what this suggests is actually that we may have the story about the internet wrong. In a broadcast society, this is how the founding mythology goes, right? In a broadcast society, there were these gatekeepers, the editors, and they controlled the flows of information. And along came the internet, and it swept them out of the way, and it allowed all of us to connect together, and it was awesome. But that's not actually what's happening right now. What we're seeing is more of a passing of the torch from human gatekeepers to algorithmic ones. And the thing is that the algorithms don't yet have the kind of embedded ethics that the editors did. So if algorithms are going to curate the world for us, if they're going to decide what we get to see and what we don't get to see, then we need to make sure that they're not just keyed to relevance. We need to make sure that they also show us things that are uncomfortable or challenging or important. This is what TED does, right? Other points of view. And the thing is, we've actually kind of been here before as a society. In 1915, it's not like newspapers were sweating a lot about their civic responsibilities. Then people kind of noticed that they were doing something really important. That in fact, you couldn't have a functioning democracy if citizens didn't get a good flow of information. That the newspapers were critical because they were acting as the filter, and that journalistic ethics developed. It wasn't perfect, but it got us through the last century. And so now, we're kind of back in 1915 on the web. And we need the new gatekeepers to encode that kind of responsibility into the code that they're writing.
How often has this happened to you? You have a conversation on social media, use a search engine to find information, or like a friend's vacation photo. Then suddenly you see advertisements all over the web for products that are weirdly relevant to your online activities. Maybe you're happy to see ads related to your interests, but maybe also a little creeped out because the online platforms you're using appear to be spying on you undetected. Did you give them permission to do this? Do you want large corporations to know your every move online? Why is this even happening in the first place? And what does it have to do with how we seek and consume information in our daily lives? Google, Facebook, YouTube, Amazon, and other online platforms want to keep us engaged with their products and services, so they use algorithms, complex computational formulas, to show us advertisements, search results, news, and other content based on the personal data they collect about us. Our searches and clicks, our likes and dislikes are tracked and fed into algorithms that determine what we see and what we don't see. The result of this automated process is that our information is filtered for us by invisible computer code, using our location, our presumed identity characteristics such as age and gender, our hobbies, interests, and shopping habits, our relationships, and even our political views. And unless we work behind the scenes for a tech company, we have very little knowledge about how or why the algorithms function the way they do, why we might see certain things and not others. What are the implications of this mysterious filtering process? If our online ecosystem is tailored to us, or assumptions about us, we are less likely to be exposed to diverse perspectives and conflicting points of view. We might miss important information because it never shows up in our personalized news feeds or search results. We might never hear about certain products, services, or opportunities. So our worldview is narrowed and shaped by algorithms. The internet becomes an echo chamber that reinforces what we already think and believe, and our ideas are never challenged. The more time we spend in this echo chamber, the more likely we are to become entrenched in our own beliefs and resist alternative views. We like the things we like, and the algorithms give us even more stuff we like. In this way, services such as YouTube or Twitter can contribute to political extremism and polarization, where different groups and communities no longer operate with the same set of facts. When we're searching the web or interacting with social media, we need to think about the limitations of the information we are exposed to as a result of algorithms. We need to consider how companies may use bits and pieces of our personal data to stereotype us and constrain the content we see.
So you're cruising around the internet and you see a link to an article from some trusted news source, and it's got a really intriguing title, so you read it. And later you find out that that whole article was mostly false. What you thought was news was really just gossip or conjecture. So we've got Ryan Holiday here. He's a media manipulator, and he explains how this happens.
So what I quickly discovered was that the media was this sort of hierarchy or chain. At the bottom, you have small blogs who have small readerships, but correspondingly low threshold for what they will and will not publish. Say this blog publishes a rumor. Then Business Insider or the Huffington Post or Perez Hilton writes about it. And now, because of the stature of those sites, it becomes something that people are talking about on Twitter, on Facebook, on email. They're chattering about it. And what happens is producers for CNN, producers for right-wing talk radio, journalists for the New York Times, where do they find out the news? They're not out pounding the pavement like it's 100 years ago. No, they're reading what people are chattering about online. And that cycle is hijacked by people like me who say, okay, if this blog here has the power to accidentally start a media firestorm by what it publishes, I'm going to get them to publish something that benefits me. I've sent them fake anonymous emails and watched as that turned into front page stories. The public isn't aware that this is how their news is being made. But on both sides of the divide, on the marketing side and on the news side, neither is particularly concerned with quality. They're concerned with what will get attention.
And that's because of how blog sites and news sites make money. First, they get a lot of viewers to their pages, and then they sell that view count to advertisers. So to get more views, you do stuff like
asking rhetorical, untrue questions in a headline, doing your fact-checking after you've published an article, gossiping, speculating, making up a story from whole cloth.
But what if I want good, accurate news? I mean, shouldn't news sites want to give that to me?
Yeah, look, I think the rule of thumb is if you're not paying for it, they don't give a shit about you. They're loyal to their advertisers.
If you're not paying for it, you're not the customer, you're the product.
There are incredibly motivated groups of people with a particular agenda, and the social ecosystem has given them the tools to reach other people to spread that agenda.
If you think about presidential campaigns from years past, they used TV and they used, radio and other media that was the same for every person who heard or saw those advertisements. But if you're thinking about how advertising works on Facebook or Twitter or other social media, they can actually customize that ad to very small groups of people who all have, say, the same personality type. And that enabled campaigns to manipulate very small segments of the population to do very specific things, whether it was to vote for a particular candidate or to raise money or potentially even to not vote at all.
These campaigns are so well executed, so well done. You don't have a natural cognitive defense against this stuff. You just are going to take what you see credulously, and particularly if it appeals to your biases, which it should if they're doing their job targeting the right people with the right content, you're going to be receptive to it.